So, the Norse gods, are they really the good guys? Are they to be trusted? Welcome back. I have another little story for you today. This time, a story about the Norse trickster Loki and the building of the wall around Asgard. Now, those of you who have been watching this channel know I've been doing quite a few trickster stories recently. One of the Celtic tricksters, Trickster. I've been doing a lot of Native American trickster stories, particularly crow or raven. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different and go back to the Norse trickster. And one of my reasons for doing this is there's a hell of a lot of similarities between the Native American trickster archetype, you know, crow, raven, coyote, wolverine. A lot of similarities between those trickster figures and other tricksters, particularly Loki, in terms of the ambivalence of this figure. You know, is he good? Is it bad? Is he creative, destructive? That's a trickster theme, and I might talk about that at the end, as well as a little bit more about this story. Now, long ago, the world was still freshly made. Odin, the All-Father, had only recently created the cosmos and separated out the various realms. The Aesir, the gods, and the Jötunn, the giants, had been battling. The Aesir had been victorious in battle, at least for now, and had sent the giants packing back to their realm, back to the frosty realm. So all was in its rightful place. The gods, they wanted good for the world. They wanted to save and protect mankind and protect the realms. The giants, they just wanted to destroy men and the world. At least, that's the story as we've been told it. But as you know, and I know, history is always written by the victor. And are the gods really all that? Well, let me tell you this. In those early days, the gods were looking for a home, somewhere high and mighty, somewhere to make their city, their shining city of Asgard. And they found a place. They found a great flat plain on top of a huge mountain. And this was where they were going to build their city. In Greek mythology, it might be the top of Mount Olympus. In Hindu mythology, Mount Meru, the great hub, center of the world. And they were going to build their city here. Thing is, they were thinking to themselves, they were going to build all their shining, glittering palaces, all their halls, but they really needed a wall, because, you know, everyone needs a wall. Everyone needs a wall. You know, you need to keep them out and keep what is inside sacred and keep the giants and the trolls and the Mexicans out, right? Now the gods, they were discussing this. And then the next day, a stranger just appears on top of this mountain. You know, he's dressed like a builder. In fact, he called himself the Master Builder. And he had with him this huge stallion, this huge big horse, biggest horse they'd ever seen. And the guy himself was pretty big. And Odin the All-Father, went out and spoke to this stranger and said, "What do you want?" And the stranger spoke and said, I hear the gods, the mighty gods, all hail ye mighty Odin, require a wall building. Well, I'm your guy. I can build a wall so wide and so high and so strong that no troll, giant, or ogre can ever get through it. And I can build this wall in 1 year. Odin thought to himself, not everything about this stranger is what it seems, but we do need a wall building. And you see, Odin, he was wise, Odin, we know that. And he knew that no one could build such a wall in a year. So he agreed. He agreed, whatever the price. So, Odin went back to the other gods and said the news, and he found someone to build the wall. And the price might be high, but it'd definitely be worth it, because, you know, he might not be able to finish the wall, and then we can finish the rest off ourselves. Clever guy, Odin. The next day, the stranger appeared with his horse, and the horse had a cart behind it and a great big pile of massive blocks, and this giant set to work building the wall. Problem was, this guy was no ordinary builder. He worked with extreme speed. It was almost like, you put Minecraft on sort of on a time relapse going really, really fast. Dunk, 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 dunk. It was like Super Tetris. He was just building this wall. Dunk, ding, diddy, ding, diddy, ding, diddy, ding, diddy, ding, 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 ding. And this wall was just going up and up and up. And the horse was no ordinary horse either. It was some kind of magic horse, and it would just come up with a load of blocks, and then it would go back down the mountain, and immediately it would come up with another load of blocks, and also the horse would get stuck in as well. It would be, doing the rendering and the mortar with its hoofs, because, horse hoofs are a bit like a trowel. Super horse. Jing, 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 jing. And between the two of them, this master builder and his magic horse, they were building that wall quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. And while the gods got to work building their own individual ideal dream houses, their halls, Valhalla for Odin, all the gods have their own individual nice big halls they're making. It was a bit of a glum business because this wall was just building up around them. And Odin began to get a little bit worried because they hadn't really set a price for this wall, right? He had just been given carte blanche, a blank check. So he went to this master builder and said, great work. Nice bit of work. Oh, yeah, nice bit of work you're doing there. Odin doesn't know a lot about building walls, clearly. Lovely, lovely. Oh, lovely bit of render, said Odin. So tell me, really pleased you're doing this job. Tell me, what will the price be for this wall? And the giant said, just small price, very, very small price. We'll get to, can you be a bit more specific? And he said, oh, no, very small price. Only the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freyja, the most fertile of all the goddesses that makes the flowers bloom and the trees grow and the grass green, to be my wife. A little price. And at that moment, Odin saw through the disguise, and he knew this master builder was a frost giant in disguise. And that frost giant looked at Odin and knew that he knew and said, I trust you will keep your oath, Odin. You see, the thing about Odin, he always keeps his oath. It's kind of his thing. So, Odin, he said, I've got my eye on you. And he walked back and told the other gods what had happened. And he said that their new home had been infiltrated by a frost giant. A frost giant isn't a very good translation, by the way. They're not necessarily, they're sort of magical beings. They're almost more, they've got more magical power than the gods in many ways. So Odin went back and broke the news to the rest of the gods, and they took it very badly indeed, particularly Freyja, because she had been pimped off to build a wall, which isn't ideal. And the gods were bickering and arguing, and Odin was saying, we've got no choice, we've made an oath, and Balder was saying, well, can't we just and then there was a little from the back of the hall. We all know who this was. It was one of those slightly annoying if I may say a word. It was, of course, Loki. Now, I'm sure you all know very much about Loki. He's a shapeshifter. He plays Tom Hiddleston in the Marvel franchise. Loki was never really one of the gods. He's only half god. His parentage, his dad was a frost giant, the giant of the wind, the north wind, they say. That's why Loki could think so fast. But Loki, in that sense, he's on the edge of things. He's part giant, part god. Tricksy character. Loki said, I think I might have a little bit of an idea. Why don't we let this giant just continue with his work? He's got a year to do it. If he doesn't complete it by a year, we don't have to pay him. Seems a bit underhand, said Odin. But we'll be keeping our oath, said Loki. And Odin agreed, and then Thor said, but look how quickly he's building this wall. He'll be finished within a year and a day. And Loki said, just leave that to me. So they waited and waited and waited, and the seasons rolled by, and Odin went out to the giant and said, I've got my eye on you, giant. We will stick by our oath, but if you are not finished with this wall by the first day of summer, when you began, then the deal's off. So, the seasons rolled slowly by. The walls were going up and up and up around Asgard, as high as you could see and thick as a giant's head. And they were nearly done. It was nearly the first day of summer again, and they were just the gatehouse of Asgard yet to complete. Just a few more blocks, maybe a dozen more blocks. And the giant, he started to do something terrible. He started to whistle while he worked. As he slowed his pace right down, knowing that he would easily have the wall done in time, especially with his magic horse. And he was just putting the bricks in place, mortaring them, and the sound of his builder's whistling was it was the sound of doom to the gods waiting inside, and particularly to Freyja, of course. And the gods were starting to get really angsty now, and Thor would be cracking his knuckles, and Freyja would be giving Loki death stares. And they were saying, I thought you had a plan, Loki. And Loki, cool as a cucumber, said, yep, just leave it to me. And he sashayed out of that hall. Now, it was dawn on the very last day. And that horse had just pulled the last few stones up the hill, up the mountain, ready to complete that wall. And that giant had all day till sundown. So he had a bit of a lie-in, he'd washed his face, he'd had he had his coffee in the morning. And he was just on his way up the hill. And his horse was nowhere to be seen. Now, earlier that day, at dawn, a mare, a female horse, had just trotted up the hill and just sort of waggled its bum, just brushed its bum in front of the other magic horse's face and said, slave, come over here. And the other horse, the magic horse, the stallion, said, like magic horses do, and said, why do you call me slave? And then Loki, because it was Loki in horse form, said, you're working all day for your master. He doesn't pay you. Why don't you come and have some fun with me, if you know what I mean, or something like that. And then he just sort of trotted away and waggled his little tush, flicked his little tail, her little tail, in a flirtatious manner. And that magic horse, he looked at the wall, looked at that horse's butt, looked at the wall, looked at butt, looked at the wall, looked at butt, and thought, well, sod this, I'm going to go and get some with that mare down there, and trotted off after Loki, the mare. But Loki just trotted a bit faster and a bit faster, and that stallion was going after, and Loki trotted all the way through the glades and forests of Midgard with that stallion crashing after. And then Loki went into a little cave, and the stallion followed, and I think you know what happened. And then Loki trotted out of that cave the next morning, and that horse, that stallion, was absolutely besotted, in love with magic horse mare Loki. And Loki would tell that stallion tales of gods and giants and elves and dwarfs. Now, when that giant got up to the wall and his horse was nowhere to be seen, he had a bit of a panic, and he started looking around, and he saw a set of hooves go down the mountain, and then he saw another set of hooves, and he followed and followed through Midgard, but his horse was nowhere to be seen, and the sun was tracking across the sky. It was past noon now, and he thought, damn it! He had to cut his losses. He would abandon his horse, give it a right scolding later, and he rushed back to the hill. He would have to move the last blocks himself, and he moved one after the other, getting them in place. mortaring them, but without his magic horse, work was slow, but still he was getting there. And by this time, the other gods had assembled on the wall. Freyja was standing there looking silently. Odin was there with a brow like thunder. And Loki had appeared from somewhere too and started mocking the giant, heckling him. Oh, I don't think... Oh, that brickwork's not so good as the last time. Oh, that mortar work's a bit sloppy. Oh, you've only got a few more hours to do this now, Mr. Giant. We know who you are. And that giant just shut the whole lot out, just ignored, just got to finish. And he just got the last block in place as the last shaft of daylight was disappearing over the horizon. It was now dusk. He had just failed his task. Jeered Loki. And then the other gods this time joined in. And Odin said, "You have failed in your task, giant. The wall is built. The moon and sun and Freyja are not yours." And the giant burst into a great rage and turned into his huge form, this great big wrathful giant, and bellowed, "You cheated!" And Odin said, "We did not cheat, no more than you." And that giant said, "Right, if you're not giving me what you are owed, what I am owed, I'll tear this wall down," and started pulling it down block by block. But the gods, they laid hands on him, and Thor picked him up and hurled him back down the mountain, and he crashed into the earth. And the gods were overjoyed, and for once Loki had done good by trickery, but he had done good, and they all clapped him on the back, and there was much feasting and the drinking of mead in Asgard that evening, and they had a bloody big wall. It was great. They would never again be besieged by giants. All were very, very joyful in the feasting, except one. Except Odin. He grumbled. He was very silent that night and did not drink of mead from his drinking horn, because although they had won the day, and technically he had not broken an oath, they had done so with trickery. And that did not sit well with Odin. Which is interesting. I'll get to why later. But first, there's a little addendum to this story. And Odin did cheer up a little bit. A few days later, only a few days, maybe nine days, when Loki became very ill and had to just excuse himself and disappeared for a few days. And around that time, a horse appeared. A horse with 8 legs, very attractive horse, just trotted into Asgard with Loki leading it. It was his child. He had given birth to a magic foal, the child he had had with that magic stallion when he had transformed himself into a mare. And Loki gave that horse, that 8-legged horse, as a gift to Odin, and that was Odin's steed, Sleipnir. You might have seen it in art and architecture. But Loki really didn't like anyone mentioning this. You know, if anyone mentioned the shameful deed of him turning into a female horse to get shagged by a stallion, then he would make life very unpleasant for them indeed. Anyway, this story is fascinating, I think. It's got many parallels in other Indo-European mythology, but it's an example of Trickster making good in the world. We get this in Native American mythology as well. Think when Crow or Raven actually steals the sun and the moon and gifts it to mankind. Similar sort of motif. Think in Greek mythology, Prometheus, who is a titan, by the way, sort of like the Greek equivalent of a frost giant, steals fire from the gods and gives it to man. So another act of trickery that is a creative act, a act of cultural evolution. Interestingly, of course, Prometheus is punished. Prometheus, the trickster, punished for this act by the gods by having his heart plucked out by an eagle every day, bound and his heart plucked out, makes me think of Loki in the end being tied up and having that serpent every day just drip his poison on his head. Similar Indo-European roots. I already mentioned, Mount Olympus and Mount Meru in Greek and Vedic Hindu mythology. And what we've got here in this story is the gods, the shining ones, Deva in Hindu mythology, literally shining ones, being in competition with what is probably an earlier race of gods, an earlier set of gods. Interestingly, I can be a bit of a language nerd sometimes. So Deva means bright or shining one, or God. It's where we get the word Deus from. It's also where the word Zeus is from. It's also where the Norse god Tyr is from, or Tiw in English, the day Tuesday. The Aesir have a different etymology. Their etymology is the same as the Asura in Indo-European. Interestingly, the Asura in Hindu mythology are the jealous gods rather than the gods themselves. They're the titans. So there's a bit of a swap in Norse mythology. I think that's just an interesting quirk of language. But the key thing about this story, I think, and what I alluded to at the very beginning of this video, is, are the gods really good? Because they won by trickery here, but also the purpose of Trickster and of the giants a lot of the time in Norse mythology is actually to threaten the eternal, comfortable nature of the gods. The gods don't grow old. The gods are always the same. Everything is always the same in Asgard. That's how they want it. Same, with us on top and you down there. Now, I don't want to put too much contemporary political sort of interpretation on that, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Constant change, everything remaining fixed with a fixed social hierarchy isn't necessarily a good thing. Certainly not for the guys at the bottom. So to have Trickster to come along and threaten this, and because Loki, remember, is a frost giant, he's one of the titans, he's one of the jealous gods, that in terms of human culture could be argued as a positive thing. So to have this constant war of attrition between jealous god and god, between Aesir and giant, is a positive thing in terms of culture. So it's important to have Trickster there. I'll probably make another video just on that subject at some point, but for now, if you like these stories that I'm doing, particularly I'm going to be doing a few Trickster stories, whether Greek, Norse, Celtic or Native American, do please give us a like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. See you later.